Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here on MMA Junkie, we take you on a quick spin through the week's news. And who better to talk to about it than the OGs of MMA Junkie Radio, Gorgeous George and Goes, who are both with us, and MMA Junkies award-nominated Mike Bond. We got loads to discuss this week, so let's get straight on with it. Saturday night saw the epic heavyweight title trilogy between Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier come to a close, as Miocic claimed a unanimous decision after 5 grueling rounds at the UFC Apex. It meant that Miocic won the trilogy and cemented himself, arguably, as the UFC's greatest heavyweight champion of all time. But it wasn't without controversy, with Cormier sustaining a debilitating eye poke during the 3rd round of that fight. So my question to kick off this week, guys, is did we get a satisfactory conclusion to that trilogy at UFC 252, given how everything panned out on fight night? Give us your take on the fight and your assessment of that trilogy as a whole. We'll have 3 minutes on the clock. George, kick us off.
Well, I've been lucky enough to see a few heavyweight trilogies like Kane and JDS, even going back to Tim Sylvia and Andrei Arlovsky. But yeah, this one topped that one. All 3 fights were pretty epic. And look, it was 25 minutes. They were going back and forth. Stuff's going to go down in sports competition. I don't think it's just, it doesn't just apply to MMA. Fan grabs, eye gouges, groin strikes. Sometimes there's hits after the whistle, after the bell or whatever. That type of stuff's going to always go down. And I would say that DC has a point in that his foul that was committed against him was the most egregious of all of them. But I don't think you can say that we're not satisfied. They went the whole 25 minutes. They both came out, from every round, from being assessed by the doctor, whatever needed to be, and they continued to compete. So I am very satisfied with the way this went down, and it was an epic trilogy.
What about you, Goes? These trilogies is supposed to determine who the better man is over those 3 fights. Was that determined? Is Stipe legitimately the better guy of the 3? Of the 2, rather?
I think it had finality to it. I just wasn't satisfied. You had one fighter that was fighting the majority of that fight with one eye, and we all know that that's just kind of hard to just glance over. It was very difficult for Daniel Cormier that night, and I think that kind of screwed with things a little bit. The fight itself was good, but at the same time, you can't take anything away from Stipe Miocic, because even though it was unfortunate that happened, it's something that happens in our sport, and a lot of fighters have been through something like that. Before the eye poke, you have 2 full rounds to go off of, but arguably they probably could have been split. So as the trilogy stands itself, it was a fun time. The only place I feel it fell off a little bit was just no crowd. None of the walkouts, that feeling you have, the goosebumps. This is the first time I missed the crowd, and I think that's where it fell short a little bit.
Yeah, what was your key emotion, your key takeaway coming out of it, Mike?
I mean, it was obviously a great trilogy, one of the most epic we've seen in the UFC. Obviously, we didn't get that big finish in this fight like we had seen in the first 2, so that took away a little bit from having that very definitive winner. But I think Stipe did a great job in making the adjustments he needed to, and came out there and fought one of the best ever in Cormiers. So it would have been nice to not have the controversy with the eye poke, of course, that left a little something hanging over this fight that we can now dissect. It would have been great to just have it be a clean ending to this, none of that controversy. But as these guys said, this is a sport where this kind of stuff comes up. So it was unfortunate that Daniel Cormier had to deal with that, and he was kind of handicapped in their fighting. But this is the way things go sometimes. And for him, I think, he did his best, and he said he was retiring going in. He said he was retiring coming out. So I think that adds the layer of finality we were looking for.
Absolutely. And just mentioned it there. Stipe Miocic looks like he's going to continue his reign as UFC heavyweight champion. DC confirmed his retirement in his post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. But as we all know, guys, MMA retirements aren't always set in stone. But he has been talking about it leading in. And now that final fight has come and gone. Do you guys truly believe that is the last we've seen of DC inside the octagon? And if so, what legacy has he left on the sport of MMA? We'll put 3 more minutes on the clock, guys. Goes, you can lead us off.
I do believe it. When he says that, I believe him 100%, because there really isn't much left out there that can pad his resume and his legacy. For him to do anything that's going to affect his legacy, he would have to go on an insane run. He'd have to take a lot of fights for us to overlook the fact that he lost twice to Stipe Miocic, and he just doesn't have that in him. He's getting older. These camps have been wearing on him. So I believe him. The only way I could see something like that happen, and it's a crazy scenario, but if there were a title fight and they needed a last-minute replacement, I could maybe see him going for something like that. But it's going to have to happen soon rather than later. As far as his legacy, I mean, this is a guy that's done it over 2 major organizations and 2 big weight classes, and he fought everyone in their prime, and there's not a lot of people that could say that. Plus his work as an analyst, he has definitely given back to MMA as much as he's taken from it.
Absolutely. Mike, you've had the chance to chat to him many times over the course of his career. What legacy has he left for you?
Man, I mean, Daniel Cormier, honestly, one of the nicest guys and most genuine people in the sport, of course. His fighting ability up there with some of the best ever. I mean, titles in 2 weight classes, defending belts in 2 weight classes. His second fight with Stipe had the most strikes landed ever in a heavyweight fight. His title fight with Alexander Gustafsson had the most strikes landed ever in a light heavyweight title fight. So this guy has been through some epic fights and given us some really great moments over the course of his career, and no one can take that away. But if we're being brutally honest here, I mean, a lot of people are going to look at Daniel Cormier the same way he did through a lot of his wrestling career to a degree, and that's being the second best. I mean, he's not the light heavyweight GOAT. That's Jon Jones. He's not the heavyweight GOAT. That's Stipe Miocic, and he came second place again, and I know that's going to burn at him for a really long time. And I think the fact that he's just brings so much to the sport kind of has some people maybe not giving him as harsh of a time about all that, and maybe not getting the wins in these truly, truly key moments when he needed to. But still one of the best fighters of all time, and I think he should be really proud of this career going forward. And I think he's someone who's going to be around the sport for a long time, but what he did in the cage at his advanced age pretty much through his whole career is pretty spectacular. So all props to Daniel Cormier, but he's not the number 1 all time, and that's just the reality of the situation.
George, you've known him for a long time. What do you reckon? We've got about 30 seconds.
Money talks. Keep an eye on a certain matchup, like Goz said, last minute, if it were to come up. I could see maybe Daniel Cormier at least giving it strong consideration if the money's right. Just like Randy Couture against Tim Sylvia back in 2007. He came out at the right time. And also keep an eye on the USADA pool. I guess if he removes himself, then yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we all believe that he's really, really done. But if he stays in there, a la Uriah Faber, then he's always, I think he's always live.
All right, and while Daniel Cormier looks set to hang up the gloves for good, Stipe seems like he's going to keep things rolling, with many now calling him the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. Some are even calling him the greatest MMA heavyweight of all time. So, guys, how do you rate Miocic right now? Is he the best ever in the UFC, or is he just the best ever, period? Or do you guys have a completely different take? We'll put 3 more minutes on the clock. Mike, you can lead us off.
Yeah, I think he's the best heavyweight we've seen in the UFC, most certainly, and probably in MMA history. That resume is unbelievable, man. I mean, he's beaten guys that were entrenched firmly in the heavyweight division before he arrived on the scene. He's beaten guys who have come up around the similar time as him, and he's beaten guys who came after him, Francis Ngannou being the like. And now he's seemingly going to circle back around to that crop of the next wave, the Curtis Blades, Francis Ngannou again, et cetera, et cetera. So he has the chance to really entrench that even further, and maybe truly go into that discussion of not just being the best heavyweight ever, but the best fighter ever. So a lot of great things on the horizon for Stipe Miocic's resume to this point. Pretty sensational, obviously having 2 wins over Daniel Cormier, all the other wins that he's had to that point. So yeah, Stipe Miocic, in my opinion, the best heavyweight we've ever seen, and is moving closer and closer to that legitimate overall GOAT discussion as he continues to pick up wins here. So it's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. And the thing, George, with these is it's always difficult comparing fighters from different generations, different rule sets, different organizations. How does he stack up against someone like Fedor, do you think?
Well, the problem with, Fedor obviously had an amazing run, like 28 fights with no losses. He had his title defenses. The problem was there was a couple cupcakes on the schedule. People hold him against that. And then he closed when he came to North America with 3 losses before he kind of came back from a retirement and then added to the resume. But by then, he was already cemented. I have no argument with somebody that says, look, it's still Fedor for me. When he fought in Pride, when he ruled Pride was the #1 organization, especially with the heavyweights. But to come over to Affliction and then do his thing against Arlovsky and Sylvia, you got to give him credit for that if you're going to also penalize him for those losses over at Strikeforce. Now, that said, I think Miocic has surpassed him. He's got 4 title defenses. He's got the wins, like Mike Bond said, against former UFC guys. So that's pretty amazing. He's avenged 2 of his losses. The only one out there still is the Stefan Struve win. 20-3 record. Amazing. He's the greatest MMA heavyweight of all time.
Greatest MMA heavyweight of all time goes, and it looks like there's 2 big names jostling for position for the next shot at him. Francis Ngannou has been waiting for his chance. Jon Jones has thrown his hat in the ring for a crack at the heavyweight title. So which fight would you rather see Stipe get next?
I'm a guy that likes order in the division, and I think for that to happen, you got to go with a guy like Francis Ngannou. The guy's next. Dana White said he's next. Of course, when Jon Jones throws his name in the hat, people are going to salivate. The guy's a phenomenal athlete, and we'd love to see him try out at heavyweight. But the fact of the matter is, he's got guys waiting for him in his division. The only reason his name would come up in the past was because he was cleaning out the division. Now that's a pretty strong division. There's people there. For Stipe, he's got a lot of work to do. He's got Francis Ngannou, possibly Curtis Blades down the line. A lot of fresh matchups for him there. I think Francis Ngannou makes the most sense. Hopefully we can do it in a stadium with a lot of people, though.
That would be awesome. And if Jon Jones makes his way up to heavyweight, then it's going to get even more fun in the UFC's top division. But we've done a lot of talk about that main event on Saturday night. The night's co-main event at UFC 252 had plenty of question marks and talking points as well, as the highly fancied Sean O'Malley suffered his first career loss to Ecuador's Marlon Chito Vera in their bantamweight matchup. The fight saw O'Malley sustain an injury midway through the fight that opened the door for Vera to claim a first-round TKO finish. The nature of the finish has led some to question the validity of Chito Vera's win. Some have even suggested it was a fluke. Others have said it was Vera's leg kicks that were key to O'Malley's mid-round injury. So what do you guys make of that fight and the finish? And how should they look to book O'Malley going forward? 3 minutes on the clock. George, you're off.
I'm watching the Nuggets and the Jazz playing an NBA game, and I'm going to summon an all-time Nugget great, Dikembe Mutombo. Yeah, no. I don't want to hear anything about this validity. That was a nice win by Marlon Vera. You got to give him all the credit in the world. That leg kick to the peroneal nerve started it all at 2 minutes and 53 seconds. I went back, I checked it out. Then a whole minute later is when the fight ended. Sure, along the way there may have been an injury, but it was caused by the fact that his lower leg was just not working, the drop foot effect. So all credit to Marlon Vera for that win. What's next for him? Look, that Song Yadong fight was pretty close. I mean, you could almost argue he's on 7 straight. You got to give him a top 10 guy. And look, he's backing it up. He's got a lot of charisma. The Cheeto show, I mean, I thought that was pretty brilliant. So give him a top 10 guy. He deserves it. And as far as O'Malley, we wish him the best when he comes back. I mean, you can tell he's an awesome fighter too, but he'll have to work his way back now.
Absolutely. Goes, how did you see it watching it on Fight Night? There were shades of Michael Chandler versus Brent Primus.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of strategy involved in what Marlon Chito Vera did, and you have to give him props, and you have to give Colin Oyama props. That they put forth a very good game plan. I thought he was going to give O'Malley problems by pressuring him, putting a lot of pressure on him, and he actually was a very patient fighter in this fight. He changed things up, and that shot to the leg was just pinpoint. So you have to give him his respect. As far as what to do with O'Malley going forward, I mean, with Sean O'Malley, like, I don't feel like he put a bad performance. It was just kind of a freak situation for him. So I would just keep him at the top there and keep giving him really high-level, good opponents because I think he deserves it. And he has the one thing, the situation's happened to him twice, and the one thing that he has is he never gave up in both of those. And that's something you can't teach. This kid's getting better and better. I don't think he loses much traction at all.
Yeah, Mike, you do our matchmaker features every week on MMA Junkie. How'd you book these 2 guys for their next fights?
Man, I'd like to see Chito. Of course, he's earned someone in like the top 15 for my column. I said like a Rob Font would be a fun type of fight. I think those are good options. I don't think he's going to get one of those like, very cream of the top 6 bantamweights, which that division is just unbelievable right now. But I think that's a suitable fight for him coming out of this. And Sean O'Malley, it's just hard to say, man. We don't know how long he's going to be out, the extent of his injury. I want to give Chito his full credit for that win. We ultimately only those guys only know what really happened in there. Sean O'Malley was the one who got injured. He knows exactly if it was a freak thing, if it was Marlon Vera's attack. Nevertheless, he comes out with his first loss. And for him, I think there's some concerns here. I mean, this is the second time we've seen him stretchered out of the octagon due to a leg injury, and Dana White expressed some concern post-fight, being like, hey, the fragility of someone like this, it could be a career derailing thing. And look at a guy like Dominic Cruz, who's had leg and foot issues throughout his career, and that's been really tough for him. So yeah, Sean O'Malley, whenever he's healthy and ready to come back, I think just someone lower half of the top 15 would be fine for him.
Yeah, and the UFC have been on the promotional hype train for Sean O'Malley. Time to get behind Chito Vera now. That's 8 finishes in a row from all his last 8 wins, all finishes. He's doing the business inside the octagon there. Let's see how far he can go up those bantamweight rankings. That is all we have time for this week on Spinning Back Clique. A huge thank you, as always, to Gorgeous George, to Goes, and to Mike Bond for joining me this week. We've got plenty to bring you on MMA Junkie this coming weekend. We've got Bellator on Friday night. We've got UFC on Saturday night. And early next week, hopefully, we've got the pleasure of your company as we unpack it all on Spinning Back Clique. Enjoy the fights, and we'll catch up with you all next week.